All right, we're going to continue working on solving Arduous tasks problem. A cubic function is graphed in the xy plane. Which of the following equations could represent the graph? So please remember that the parent function goes down and then goes up. So just because it's flipped, I know there's got to be a negative out front. So we're going to eliminate those two. And then we look at the roots. So here we have x equals -1, x equals 0, and x equals 2. So what that means is I've got x equals 0 corresponds to the negative x out front, and the x minus 1 corresponds to x plus 1, and the x equals 2 is x minus 2. So our answer is D. Remember, the x-intercepts, solutions, or roots change signs when they go to the factors. In triangle LMN, since sine of x equals 6/7, what is the length of MN? So this goes back to SOHCAHTOA. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. So I know that sine of x degrees equals 6/7. That's opposite over hypotenuse. So here's opposite of x degrees. Here's the hypotenuse. And we were asked for mn, which is the hypotenuse. So 12 over our unknown hypotenuse equals 6/7. Well, this just reduced by 2, so h would be 14. Okay, if you want to cross multiply that, you may. 6h equals 84. Divided by 6h equals 14. But if you can reason that out, that'll save you 15 seconds, and that can help on a standardized test. In the xy plane, if the solutions to the systems of inequalities, y is less than ax plus 1 and y is greater than bx plus 1 are only in quadrant 1, which of the following relationships between a and b must be true? So let's take a look. If I have ax plus 1, I'm just going to call this 1. So that means I have some slope this way. If y is less than this, and I have bx plus 1, say this was y, the second one, and it's greater than this, we definitely have solutions in the first quadrant, but we also have solutions in the fourth quadrant. Now, this would be true for any any graph where the second one has a negative slope. So we're just going to have to reason this out. If we have a 0 slope, that would seem to work. But what about the case where this is our first one and that's our second one? Well, we go lower than this one and above that one, solutions are going to be in the third quadrant, so that doesn't work. So it looks like the slope of the first one has to be greater than the slope of the second one, which has to be bigger than 0. Okay, so A has to be the largest, so that's those two. And then B cannot be less than 0, and so our answer is C. Now, I think technically it could be B is greater than or equal to 0, but that's not a differentiating characteristic of these options, and so we would just stick with C. Ivan had saved $500 from his summer job. He will need $75 per month when he returns to school in the fall, but wants to keep at least $50 in reserve. Which of the following inequalities best describes the number of months M Ivan can use his funds, assuming there are no additions to or withdrawals from his savings? He wants to keep at least 50 in his reserve, so that means 500 minus however many he takes per month has to be greater than or equal to 50. Okay, so the answer is C. Um, at least means it could be that amount or more, so that's why we have the or equal to sign. In this, I like the starting point minus the change per whatever it is, and this is per month. If we had to do more work, we would put months in there, but that would give us that inequality. What are the possible x values that solve the given equation? Now, in an equation like this, if you were unsure, you could just plug it in, which might be not a terrible option. Notice we have perfect squares here, 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. So 1 minus 5 times the square root of 1 plus 6 equals 0. That's 1. 1 minus 5 is negative 4 plus 6 does not equal 0, so 1 doesn't work. Let's check 9 because it's in all three. I'm guessing that one probably does work. 9 minus 5 times the square root of 9 plus 6 equals 0. That's 15 minus 15 is 0, so 9 works. 4 minus 5 times the square root of 4 is 2, plus 6 equals 0. So that's 4 times 6 is 10 minus 10 equals 0. So I'm going to guess that it is 4 and 9. Now I'm not guessing, I know that those two worked. If I had made a mistake, I might be missing one. If I had time, I might check these other ones. If I have my graphing calculator, I could enter this into my calculator. So I'm doing that now. X minus 5 square root of x plus 6, and then I go second table, and I can just enter all these values in quickly and see which ones equals 0, and 4 and 9 are the only ones that do. So going to y equals, entering that in, and seeing the table, using the table function and plugging those in, makes that much faster. Next problem, one cookbook recommends that a person can substitute 1 tablespoon of dried mint leaves for 1/4 cup of fresh mint leaves. The salad recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of fresh mint leaves. How many tablespoons of dried mint leaves could a person substitute into the recipe? So 1 tablespoon of dried equals 1/4 cup. Now it gives me a conversion chart here, so I'm going to convert that now. Equals 4 tablespoons fresh. Okay. So the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of fresh, so that's half of this. So I'm going to go half of that. So 1/2, 0.5. Okay. If we wanted to set that up into a ratio, you could 1 to 4. So this is dried over fresh. So I just need to put dried as our x over fresh. Cross multiply, solve that, would get the 1/2 as well. Which of the following expressions is equivalent to this and this? I don't think there's anything tricky here. If you see a problem like this, make sure that you have a plus. If it's a negative, make sure you distribute that to each term in that second parentheses. So this would be x squared plus x squared is 2x squared. Minus 2x plus 2x cancels. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2x squared plus 2 is my answer. Please look very carefully. I've given questions like this on tests before or quizzes, and students will multiply. You are not foiling this out. This is just to combine like terms. Parentheses only means multiplication if there is something right next to it. Because there's that addition, it's just a grouping symbol. What are all the possible values of x that satisfy the given equation? Again, I would use my calculator for this. Let me type it in, and then we will look at other ways to do this. So I put in 3/5 doesn't work. 9/25 works. And 0 works. So 0 and 9/25 is the solution. If we were to solve this by hand, what I would do is I would add 3x to the 1/2, and then I would divide by x to the 1/2. That means 5 times x to the 1/2. Now I just simplified that. That's x to the first over x to the 1/2. So that's x to the 1 minus 1/2 equals x to the 1/2. That's what happened there. Equals 3, so x to the 1/2 equals 3/5. And so if I square both sides, x equals 9/25. But from my original equation, x could also equal 0. Okay. Daily rainfall in centimeters was recorded over a 41-year period in Turramurra. For each year, the day with the most rain in centimeters was plotted according to its amount of rainfall to the nearest 2 centimeters. According to the dot plot, what is the maximum amount of rainfall that was ever recorded in a single day in Turramurra in centimeters? This is a skill that is important to have, being able to read graphs. This is not a complicated question. There's no process. There's just, do we understand what this information is giving us? This is a dot plot. So, daily rainfall in centimeters was recorded over a 41 period. For each year, the day with the most rain in centimeters. So, let's say that 50 years ago, the highest rainfall day was 22 centimeters. That would correspond to a dot right here at 22 centimeters. Okay, so what that means is this dot corresponds to 1 day, 1 year, the highest day, the day with the highest amount of rainfall was 10 centimeters. Okay, which means that during 1 year, during 2 years, the highest amount of rainfall received in any one day was 4 centimeters. This is the maximum amount of rainfall that was ever recorded in a single day in Turramurra over the last 41-year period. So the answer is 38. Okay. Now, what some students might do is say, oh, 18 has the most, so that's the maximum. But we need to make sure that this just represents that 18 occurred the most times over the course of these 41 years, that 18 centimeters happened the most. But that wasn't the most amount of rain. This 38 was. Which of the following is an equivalent form of the function f in which the base of the exponent is 1/2? This is a good practice. So I'm going to have my 1000 times 1/2. Now I'm not done yet. I'm just rewriting this. So I got to have 1/2 raised to some exponent. Okay. So 1/2 raised to some exponent has to equal 1/16. Well, 2 to the 4th power is 1/16. So that means 1/2 to the 4th power equals 1/16. So that means I have 1000 times 1/2 times 4 times t over 4. These 4 cancel and I'm just left with t. Notice this didn't change to 1000 at all. It just affected those exponents. And so my answer would be B. In the circle, segment PQ is a diameter. If the length of PRQ is 22 pi, what is the length of the radius of the circle? So the length of the arc is theta over 360 if we're dealing with angles times 2 pi r. Okay, so we have half of the circle. So really what we have is 180 over 360 times 2 pi times the radius. But 180 times 2 is 360, so this simplifies to 1. So 22r equals, pi r equals 22 pi. That means our radius is 22. What is the length of the radius of the circle? 22. So this is the formula for the arc of a circle. Elena is designing a paint can with thickness t millimeters and a height h centimeters. She calculates that the thickness of the can in millimeters must be at least 0.1 times the height of the can in centimeters in order to withstand pressure. Due to cost constraints, the cost of material used, this cents, must be at most 12.2 cents. Which of the following systems of inequalities best models the relationship between height and thickness described? So let's take a look at what we can see here. The thickness of a can in millimeters must be at least 1/10 times the height of the can in centimeters. So that means the thickness must be at least, okay, so I've got a less than or equal to sign, 0.1 h. Okay, now I don't see that anywhere there, so I'm going to have to make some adjustments. But let's write the other one. 0.2 plus t plus 0.5 h must be at most, so this has to be less than or equal to 12.2. Now I don't see any decimals here, and so I see a half. So let's take a look at this. This top one, they all kind of look the same. This top one kind of looks like this, because if I subtract 0.2 from both sides, I'll get t plus 1/2 h is less than or equal to 12. But I notice they've solved for t here. So t is less than or equal to 12 minus h over 2. So I'm seeing that in a couple places. So t is less than or equal to 12 minus h over 2. So it looks like I'm determining between a and b. So let's take a look at this one. I see a 10 though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply both sides of this equation by 10. So 10t is less than or equal to 1h. And it looks like I made a mistake because I don't see that anywhere. So I'm going to reread and make sure I have my sign in the correct direction. Because at this point I would say it's probably A. So the thickness of the can in millimeters, thickness must be at least, that means it has to be greater than or equal to. Okay. So I did get that sign wrong, and my answer is A. Which of the following is equivalent to the given expression? Now, on all of these, it looks like I have j cubed and k cubed. So I'm just looking at the answers. And so what is happening in here? And it looks like I'm factoring out the greatest common factor. So I'm going to take a look at this. 3j squared k plus 3jk squared. So there's a 3 and 1j and 1k. So if I pull that out, j's left on the first one. If I pull that out of the second one, I have a k left on the other one. So that corresponds to answer C. I don't know why they would be writing it like that, but we can find that that is equivalent. So again, if you are factoring out a common factor between two terms or multiple terms, you have to see which is common between them all, pull that out and see what's left. Do not forget, if I had y x plus y, and I was factoring out a y, that would leave me with x plus 1, because there's a 1 multiplying by that y. A software distributor charges $41 per license of a particular utility. The distributor offers a 10% discount on each license for the first 20. How much would a business pay to buy 40 licenses of the utility in dollars? So we're buying 40 licenses. So let's take a look. $41 per license. Okay, of a particular utility, that's like a program. But it offers a 10% discount on each license after the first 20. So I'm going to go 20 times 41 plus 41 times 0.90. This is my 10% off because this is 90%, right? Times how many I purchase minus 20. Okay, now I'm using this because I already know they purchase more than 20. So it might be convenient just to write this as 20. And if I put that in my calculator, I've got 20 times 41 plus 41 times 0.9 times 20. And I got 1,558. Now, like you, when you take this test, you have no idea if you're close or maybe you're way off because there's no multiple choices. But I think we have set that up properly. Again, this 90% is the key. Raymond just got done jumping at Super Bounce Trampoline Center. The total cost of his session was $43.25. Okay, now I'm going to write total cost. He had to pay a $7 entrance fee and $1.25 for every minute he was on the trampoline. How many minutes did Raymond spend on the trampoline? So all we do is we write the equation here and solve. So 43.25, we subtract the entrance fee. That means $36.25 was from him jumping. So we divide by $1.29, and that's 29 minutes. Next problem, given the equation, what is the value of 3y minus 1? Now you might say, why are we asking 3 minus y minus 1? There's two options. One, you can solve to find y equals and then plug it back in here. Often the way these are set up allows you to do something differently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 7 first. Now I can see that I can get 3y minus 1 by factoring out 8. So 3y minus 1 equals 11/4. Now, if we didn't want to do that, we would just add 8 to both sides over here and get 24y equals 30th. So y equals 30 24ths or 15/12. And then we'd have to multiply that by 3 and subtract 1. Sorry, minus 1. So 15/12 times 3 minus 1 equals 11/4 as well. Getting into messier fractions and things, but either way can be done, not extremely difficult. All right, what are the solutions to the given equation? Let's go through this. If you have something squared, the goal is to get that alone first, if you can. Okay, so because I have that x in parentheses squared and no other x's anywhere else, I can solve this by using square root. So x minus 3 equals plus or minus 9. Remember, when you square root both sides of an equation, that you must include the plus or minus. So x equals 3 plus or minus 9. 3 plus 9 is 12. 3 minus 9 is negative 6. So my answer is C. The farmer's rectangular plot with length of L meters and width of W meters is shown in the figure. The perimeter or distance around the plot is 700 meters. Which of the following equations shows the perimeter of the plot in terms of length and width? I'm looking at 2L plus 2W equals 700. We could go L plus W equals 350, but that is not it. That's not what that one has. This is the area. They're just checking to see if you can create a simple equation like that. In a particular city, a sample of the population showed that 84% of households lived in the same residence as they had the previous year. The estimate had a margin of error of 1.5% at the 90% confidence level. If the county has 50,000 households, which of the following best estimates the number of households that lived in the same residence as they had the previous year at the 90% confidence level? Because we're talking about the same confidence level, we can just kind of ignore that. So what I need to do is I need to figure out what 84% of 50,000 is. And to do that on the calculator, I'm going to multiply by 0.84. So that is 42,000. So that means I would expect around 42,000, give or take 1.5%. So this 1.5% refers to our original amount. So I'm going to go 50,000 times 0.015%, and that equals 750. So that means give or take 750. Not that that's the mathematically correct term, but that's how you might be familiar with it. So I'm looking at 41,250 to 42,750 households. We're 90% confident that the number of people that lived in the same residence, number of households that lived in the same residences as they had the previous year, will be within that range. Okay, consider the systems of equations. If xy is the solution to the system, then what is the value of x plus y? Okay, so I need to find the solution, and then I need to add them together. There are a few ways to do this. You could do this on Desmos. Just type these in. It's going to graph it, give you the point. That will be the xy. That would be the easiest way to do it. I'm going to show you, remind you the elimination. So I'm going to multiply this bottom one by -4, because that's going to give me negative 8x plus 24y equals -12. So that cancels. So I get 23y equals 0. That means y has to equal 0. Okay, so now if y is 0, x is going to be 8x equals 12. So divide by 8. X equals, divide those by 4, that's 3 halves. So 3 halves should be my answer here, 1.5. I just graphed and verified that is the answer on Desmos. Which of the following is equivalent to this? Now, something I noticed, we've seen these problems like this before. If I've got a fraction over a fraction, we want to get rid of it. So you multiply the numerator and the denominator by the common denominator of all the fractions, which in this case is just x. So I'll have 3 times x and 3 over x times x, 4 times x, 4 over x times x. What that will give us is 3x plus 3 on top and 4x plus 4 on bottom, and that is almost our answer. Because what happens if I factor out a 3 on top and a 4 on bottom, then the x plus 1's cancel. And I would get 3/4, but we'd say x cannot equal -1. Alright, if theta is 220 degrees, what's the value of theta in radians? Remember, 180 over pi, or pi over 180 degrees. Now, whichever one you are given, so I am given degrees, I think back to my dimensional analysis, I need that degree to cancel out, so I'm going to put my degrees on bottom. So I've got 220 over 180. You can throw that in the calculator and let that simplify, or let's cross that out. That would be 11/9 pi. Either way will get us to that answer. So this expression can be written as this polynomial. That's not a polynomial, but where t, k, and s are constants, what's the value of s? So t, k, and s are constants. If I would FOIL this constant right here is only going to come from s is going to equal negative t squared times k. All right. Now, what else we need to know is that this value here, negative 9y, came from negative t squared times y. I think that gives me a pretty good idea of what t is. And this value, 36y squared, came from ky squared. So that means I'm thinking t is 3 and k is 36. So the idea is we could just FOIL this and go, oh, that's y cubed plus ky squared minus t squared y minus t squared k. And then figure out, oh, well, 36 must be k, 3 must be t, so we'll have 3 squared times 36, which gives us 324. However, I've got this minus sign because we're going to take that negative t squared plus k, so the answer will be a minus 324. Which of the following is true of the graph of y over 9 minus x over 6 equals 1 in the xy plane? Okay, the graph's x-intercept is this, and y-intercept is that. So it gives me slope. One of the ways you could just put this into Desmos and see if those x-intercepts work. You could check the slope, so graphing it on Desmos would work. A little bit tricky to graph on your TI-84. One way to do this is to take this equation and multiply everything by 18, because that would give us 2y minus 3x equals 18. And then this might be easier to find slope-intercept form, which might be helpful. So y equals 3 halves x plus 9. So just from this, I can eliminate these two slopes because my slope is positive 3 halves, and the y-intercept is 9, so the answer is A. By multiplying by that common denominator, that helps get rid of those fractions and makes that algebraically much easier to work with. All right, 1.5a minus 4.5b equals 3 quantity a plus b, 5.5b plus 5 times b minus a plus 2.5a. So if ab is the solution to the systems of equations, what's the value of b minus a? So on this, there are a couple of ways you could approach it. You could approach it strictly algebraically, but really that is not going to help you very much. Well, it will take you a long time to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in x and y instead and graph it on Desmos. As long as I've typed this in correctly, I found this solution, and the solution is 0, 0. Now, we might have been able to figure that out by inspection to say, hey, if this all zeroes out, if a and b were 0, then this is 0, and I get 0 equals 0, and I get the same thing over there. Graphing didn't take too long, so b minus a is just 0. A circle in the xy plane has its center at the point 0.4 and negative 0.3. If the 0.65 lies on the circle, what is the diameter of the circle? Okay. If you are going to guess, please guess an answer that is twice as big as the other one. So with circles, you're going to be dealing with radius, but they ask for the diameter. So I am just guessing that the answer will be either that one or that one, because those ones are the double of the others. So my answer will be either B or D. If you can just make that guess, if you have to guess, if you make that assumption, then you have a 50% chance of guessing correctly rather than a 25%. So x minus 0.4 squared plus y plus 0.3 squared equals r squared. Okay, so what this means is I'm going to put in 6 minus 0.4 squared plus 5 plus 0.3 squared, and that equals r squared. So what I got was 59.5 equals r squared. I should have made this leap also, that the square root of 59.5 is about 7.7. And so this was r squared, this was my r, which means this is my diameter. Okay, but that's how you calculate it. So we're going to then times that by 2 to get 15.4 for the diameter. Jerry has a large car which holds 22 gallons of fuel and gets 20 miles per gallon. Kate has a smaller car which holds 16.5 gallons of fuel and gets 30 miles per gallon. If both cars have a full tank of fuel now and drive the same distance, in how many miles will the remaining fuel in each tank be the same? So we have x is the number of miles. So I've got 22 gallons minus x over 20 equals the fuel left. For Jerry, 16.5 minus x over 30 is fuel left for Kate. So we want to know how many miles it will take for the fuel left to be the same. So I'm going to set them equal to each other and solve this equation. So I put that in my calculator. I subtracted 16.5 from both sides. I got 5.5 equals x over 60. So x will equal 330, and x is my number of miles. So that's my answer. So we have two climate scientists who are creating models for global rising sea levels. One has a 10-year doubling model, and this is the function, where t is the number of years after 2005. The other scientist proposes a steady increase model, says it increases by 5 centimeters per year. Both models predict that in the year 2105, so when t equals 100, the sea level will increase by 500 centimeters. So that is our x and y value and x and y value. So now what we're going to do, we know that this linear model goes through this point and has a slope of 5 centimeters. So we need to find our starting point, y. Let's do y minus y1 equals slope 5 times x minus x1. So y equals 5x. That's minus 500 plus, so it just states y equals 5x. So now in 2055, after 50 years, y equals 5 times 50, the linear model says that we should have 250 centimeter increase. Okay, and then we'll plug this other one into the calculator, 125 over 256 times 2 raised to the 50 divided by 10. I get 125 eighths. So 250 minus second answer equals 234.375 centimeters. It says to the nearest centimeter, so 234 centimeters. Thank you for watching.